Hello everybody, welcome to episode 248 of Show Fever. Today I'll be going over Final Fantasy VI. So I played the PS4 version. It's technically not the Pixel remaster, remake, whatever version you want to call it. And I learned that much to my chagrin. So I just kind of start over like a bit of a recap over the story. So the story we follow as the Empire. I don't know if the Empire's actually ever given a name, but the Emperor Gestahl is the kind of the main villain for the first part of the story, because the story is divided into two parts: the World of Balance and the World of Ruin. And we see as he's going about conquering everything, and they are then introduced to our main little group, the Returners, who are essentially a rebellious group, and their goal is to overthrow Emperor Gestahl and restore peace to the land. So first we're introduced to Terra. Terra is a magicite warrior, and well, not necessarily, because she's actually an Esper. Well, she's a human Esper hybrid. And we see that she's been raised by Emperor Gestahl and the Empire. However, she does not have any memories because they've been erased from her. So we see in like kind of her story as we go throughout, her trying to like recover memories, recover things from her past, and learn more and more about herself. So I guess I'll kind of just predominantly discuss the character stories first. So we also have Locke. Locke is a treasure hunter who has this beloved girl in Kolingen, and he is trying to figure out how to go and save her, because it was kind of his fault why she ended up bedridden for multiple years. So that's kind of his goal. We have Celeste. Celeste is a disillusioned Empire general. Why can't I remember the name of the Empire? I swear there was a name for it, but I might be mistaken. Okay, it's probably because it's been a moment since I did my full playthrough. At least my full locked in playthrough. Because how I worked is I wanted to platinum the game, so I ran through the game, did everything, followed a guide step by step. Well, not like a guide, but like a collectible guide step by step. Got to the end. No legendary treasure hunter achievement. So I had to play through that entire John again. It took me like 20 extra hours. And I finally got it. I was terrified that I wasn't going to get it at the end. I was going to throw my controller through my TV or something like that. But ultimately I didn't end up platinuming it. But because of that, my memory is a little bit iffy, because I just kind of really skipped through all the story and stuff so I could get through it as fast as possible just to get the trophy. But yeah. The first time I did play, I went and talked to every citizen every time, because I like doing that in RPGs, because sometimes you learn stuff that you wouldn't have learned elsewise. Heck, on my second playthrough, I learned about something that hadn't even happened in my first one somehow, but it wasn't required for 100% completion. It was kind of a cute little side thing. But yeah, Celeste, disillusioned general, and she kind of has a lot of guilt for what she did with the Empire. She is also a magicite warrior, so she can use magic. And we see as she kind of goes throughout, she ultimately ends up falling in love with Locke. They kind of have a little bit of a back and forth and everything. And we just kind of see as this develops, ultimately Celeste does kind of come to accept who she is, and she and Locke end up falling in love. Then, who do I want to discuss next? Setzer. Setzer is a gambler. He is really cool. His design's really cool, but honestly, he kind of sucks when it comes to his abilities. So I used him in my first playthrough a little bit, but then I was like, his kind of sucks, so I just went to use other people. But yeah, so Setzer. He is a gambler. He has a bit of a past. We see that he, at one time, was in a relationship with another woman because he's kind of how you get the airship in this game. And he was in love with a woman who also had an airship. They kind of got together, met and all that. Ultimately, she ended up dying, so he went and hid her airship so no one else could have it and all that. And ultimately, once we get to the World of Ruin, that's how we get another airship that isn't the Blackjack that we use in the World of Balance. So, Cyan. Cyan's story is my favorite throughout the entirety of Final Fantasy VI when it comes to individual stories, because Cyan is this warrior from the Doma Castle, or I guess the Doma Kingdom. And we see early on in the story as we're going, because after the first the prologue, you get to split off into 3 different branching stories which all reunite at the end of them. But this is technically part of Sabin's scenario. Sabin is probably my second favorite character in all of Final Fantasy VI. But Cyan, we see as he's a warrior of Doma Castle, and Kefka, who is the main antagonist in the entirety of Final Fantasy VI, ends up attacking Doma Castle. They go in trying to fight him, but ultimately Cyan puts the whooping on him. But Kefka gets the bright idea, you know what, I'm going to poison their water supply. So Kefka ends up throwing poison into the water supply, and everyone in Doma Castle ends up dying besides Cyan. And we see as Cyan watches as his family dies. His 2 children, I think it's 2 children? No, it's just a son and a wife. But yeah, so very tragic. So then as you progress along in Sabin's scenario, after you fight at the Imperial camp and all of that, you end up heading to the Phantom Forest, hop on the Phantom Train, and after the Phantom Train ordeal, we see as Cyan and everyone, Cyan, Sabin, and Shadow at the moment, are waiting on the train, and we see as Soul starts to climb aboard, and his wife and son climb aboard the train. We see as Cyan tries to fight to get them back, but he's ultimately unable to. That was just super sad. Like, holy smokes. And so Cyan doesn't have much more we see throughout this until getting to the World of Ruin, where ultimately you end up reuniting with Cyan, because after the World of Balance events, everyone kind of gets scattered, and they don't reunite until close to the end of the World of Ruin part. So we see Cyan ultimately ends up going and writing letters for this person. He ends up hiding in a cave, essentially, and writing letters to this individual who believes that it is their lover, because he wants to make someone feel good. He wants to be able to better someone's life in this world of ruin. And we just kind of see as he focuses on that, we also see as later on you end up returning to Doma Castle in the World of Ruin, and you go through like this dream sequence where we see as his family consoles him and all of that. You have to fight a bunch of like other enemies in his dreams, stuff like that. And once everything is done, he ends up becoming reconciled with the idea that his family is gone, but they will always be with him in his arts and in his heart. So we see then as he ends up unlocking the ultimate Bushido, which is super cool. I love that. So Edgar, I guess I'll go Sabin first. Sabin, he is a martial artist. His, I guess, crap, what is his name specifically called? No, it's not Rushes. Is it Rushes? No, crap. Okay, so Sabin has martial arts techniques. That's his ability, and so he is a not necessarily exile, but a runaway son of the royalty of Figaro. And we see as he ends up running off, getting trained in martial arts, and he ran away because once his father died, his twin brother Edgar ultimately became king because they flipped a coin and it ultimately landed on Edgar becoming king. Sabin ran away because everyone seemed not really to care about the fact that his father had died, so he was really mad about this. He ends up running away, allowing Edgar to become king, even though Edgar had already agreed to become king because he lost the coin flip. So Sabin ends up running off and doing his thing, and now Sabin doesn't really get too much more like not really explanation, but like development upon his character from this. But I just really like that little story. And honestly, Sabin as a character, he's really goofy, and I love him throughout all this because he has a very good heart, and he adds a nice sense of humor to this, even though the world is very dark. He is able to, I guess, find happiness and find the ability to help others, even in this ultimate darkness. He's a very altruistic character. So Edgar is the king of Figaro. We see as he ultimately has to defend Figaro from Kefka once he ends up coming and trying to take it, or very early on in the game. And we just don't get like absurd. We got about as much on him as we do for Sabin. And then I guess like the other characters we have, Cyan. Who am I forgetting? Shadow, I like Shadow because of Interceptor, which is his dog. Shadow is a ninja character, and he has a little dog named Interceptor, and Interceptor's the GOAT for real, because Interceptor does more damage than Shadow half the time from his ability Takedown. But yeah, so Shadow, he is a ninja. He ultimately had, he was kind of a vagabond for a time. He lived in the area of Thamasa, and just kind of did his thing. We see he has some, like, a little bit of emotional stuff, but it's nothing too crazy. We learn that his, like, family died and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's kind of the basic rundown for Shadow. He is a cool character. I wish Shadow was a little bit more useful because I would have used Shadow more. However, I might have just been using him right, but he kind of sucked when I played with him. But yeah. So besides that, I kind of gave a rundown of the general story right there. Now, like, what we see throughout the World of Balance is we're ultimately tasked with trying to take down Kefka. We see as Kefka and Gestalt attempt to release the Espers from the Esper Cave, which the Espers are essentially magical beings. They allow magic to be performed, and we see that through magicite, which they can turn into, it can like inhibit humans to use, not inhibit, but allow humans to use magic. And that is honestly the thing that I like about the first world of, actually, no, I'll speak about that later. But yeah, so we see they can turn into magicite. We learn this. We go around, start and collect magicite, and ultimately they go try and open up the Esper Cave, but the Espers allow themselves to get released, and also this is kind of where we get the revelation that Terra is the daughter of Maduin, one of the Espers, and a woman. So that's kind of just that. And we see that as due to this, Terra can turn into like a semi-Esper form. So kind of see as all this plays out. And ultimately, like I said, they are able to open the Esper Cave, but the Espers come rushing out, shut down, and they go around the Empire, just ravishing everything. So then after that, the Returners end up going to the Imperial capital of Vector. And here, end up meeting with Gestalt. Gestalt acts like, yo, I'm very sorry for all this stuff that I've done, and yo, I do not want this to continue happening, so I'm going to, ceasefire and hope the Espers are no longer attacked. So we see, then after that, everyone kind of starts going about their thing. We go meet Strago and Realm, who are kind of cool characters, but I do not like their abilities. And C, go with them, get Strago Realm, and then ultimately we see that Gestalt is in fact not going back on his word. He lied, and him and Kefka were arranging these statues of these three very powerful beings. I can't remember exactly what the title of them is, but ultimately arranges them, creates the floating continent, and then we see as we progress to the floating continent that Kefka ultimately betrays Gestalt, kills him, and then Kefka essentially becomes almighty, and then the world of ruin kind of all starts after everyone is saved. Well, not everyone. Well, yeah, everyone is saved amongst the main cast besides Gestalt. But yeah. So then, World of Ruin. What the goal of World of Ruin is to go and find everyone, reunite your party. And once you reunite your party, you can do like a couple other side things, like the Cultist Tower. Also, I forgot to mention Gao. Gao is another one of my favorite characters because he's just goofy. He's like this wild, like Tarzan-like child, and he's just very funny. Seeing him and Sabin interact is super funny. And I also did like the little piece of the story I said I discovered on my second playthrough that I didn't know on my first. And this is a bit of Gao's backstory. You end up finding this cabin in the World of Ruin who's supposedly houses the father of Gao. And we see his little like sequence goes down. Everyone in the party tries to help Gao spiffy up a little bit, even though he's a wild child and doesn't really understand it. And they ultimately end up returning him to his father's house, where he speaks about how much he hated his son because of how wild his son is. He presumed he was a demon. And then Sabin gets mad at this. He's like, yo, that's your son right there. You're talking about him in such a way you haven't seen him in years. But then Gao ends up leaving the house. They all end up going and speaking with him. Gao's like, I'm just happy my dad's okay. Even though he doesn't say that. He's just like, whoa, father, happy, go, happy, or something like that. But yeah. So that's kind of what we see with World of Ruin is you reunite everyone, then you get like more character development predominantly on like Celeste and Locke, because Celeste is technically the main character predominantly of the World of Ruin section, and then end up getting to Kefka Tower, where you end up playing through it, do a lot of puzzles, fight a lot of cool bosses, but the coolest boss is left for the end, because Kefka is sick. This is one of the coolest boss battles I have ever done in an RPG. So what you have is like this amalgamation of like beings stacked upon each other, and you have to slowly fight your way up, and you have three parties that you can pick from. Like when a character dies, another one gets sent in for the one that died. And you slowly fight your way up this tower until you ultimately get to the top where Kefka is in his like angel, like god-like form. And here you fight him, and it's honestly pretty easy once you actually get to Kefka. Now getting up the tower can be a little tricky, but once you actually get to Kefka, it is not super easy, but it's pretty easy. Like this game isn't really hard. The only time I really had to grind was in my second playthrough when I was just specifically like rushing to the story as fast as possible. I had to grind a couple times, like before the tendrils in Figaro Castle in the World of Ruin, and I think that was the only time. Before a couple of the dragons, before the Ice Dragon, no, not the Ice Dragon, the Storm Dragon. I had to grind quite a bit on my first playthrough before the Storm Dragon, because the Storm Dragon is honestly pretty difficult, and it's the first dragon you have to fight, but the other dragons are pretty easy as compared to it. But yeah, so get to Kefka, defeat him, the world is saved. We see as Espers kind of start returning to their land. Terra actually doesn't like die or lose her magical abilities here, and she is perfectly okay. Everyone's good, everything's hunky-dory, and none of the main cast died. So that is kind of the general story of Final Fantasy VI. Now I'll get into the battle system. The World of Balance battle system is probably my favorite in all the Final Fantasy games. Now to preface, I have played Final Fantasy 16, 1, 6, 4, bits of 8, 7, and Crisis Core. So 7 games. Now, if I were to rank them, my favorite is absolutely Final Fantasy 16. That's my favorite game of all time. Then 2 at the moment would probably be 4, without including 6, obviously. 4, 7, and Crisis Core would just go together. And then 1. And like I said, parts of 8, but I can't really rank 8 because I haven't completed it. But yeah, so that's kind of that arrangement there. 1 is obviously, it's not bad, but like it's just the least, I guess, compelling of a story. But yeah, so the fighting system though in the first half of 6 is super cool because it's not fully not everyone can learn magic. You gotta learn focus on developing the abilities. You gotta level up your character and their abilities improve. However, like with ones like Edgar, you actually gotta find the items to to find the tools which he can use to a higher level. But yeah, I just really love the fighting system of the World of Balance. Now it's very similar to like Final Fantasy VII's fighting system where you have the AP bar, you got magic, you got abilities and stuff like that. However, I really liked how magic was a big focus in the World of Balance until you obviously started unlocking Magicite and the Espers and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to World of Ruin, I did like it because I liked having the Espers as a way to learn magic, because I feel as if at certain times, learning magic can be detrimental to a character's stats in other Final Fantasy games, and it can be confusing also to teach certain characters magic. Like, honestly, it might have been because I was just quite a bit younger when I played Final Fantasy VII, but I found the materia system to be a little bit odd. And the Esper system is very straightforward. You just put an Esper, you learn a select amount of magic, then you get a star on that Esper, and then you got to swap to another one to learn some more magic. And I love that because on my second playthrough, I was teaching like every character every magic, and it was super fun and super useful. But it does kind of suck that you don't have to like focus the magic on certain characters. So like customization is lost, so it does kind of suck a little bit. But I still really like the battle system of Final Fantasy VI. I believe it is most certainly out of the 2D Final Fantasies I played, which is technically only 3 of them. It is the best. Now, I guess, what is there? The Espers themselves, the Espers are summons in this game, or the Magicite, and I don't like them as much as I do them being magic. Now, obviously, it's a 2D game, so like they can't go crazy all out with the Esper summons. Obviously, in the 3D games, the summons always look cooler because they have more accessibility that they can use and work around them. But I did really like them, and like I said, I especially like them because of how their magic system worked. But yeah, so design it was, like I said, the remakes, but it is still very good design. That 16-bit era of Final Fantasy is genuinely one of the most beautiful works of sprite art and sprite work throughout the entirety of like all video gaming history. They always look great, and like I said, especially on like Kefka looked super cool, and like the demons you gotta fight before getting to Kefka, like Demon and Fiend, they do look super cool as well, and I love them. Like Mega Buster, crap, what's that one's name? Oh dang, Ultima Buster? I think that's the name of the one you fight in Kefka Tower. But yeah, so those all super cool. The music, it's Final Fantasy. You know the music slaps. Now this is probably, besides Final Fantasy 16, this probably had my favorite music because like I love it. There's that one song that Celeste sings at the Opera House during a bit of a little side tangent where you fight Ultros, who is a recurring comedic villain throughout it. Promises of perennial love. That was stuck in my head all the time. That is such a good song. It's in my playlist. That song, the battle themes in Final Fantasy always go crazy. I don't know what it is. Like, oh my gosh, the Final Fantasy 1 battle theme is an insane bop. That thing has you like grooving and busting a move and stuff like that. I love that theme. But yeah, what other one was there? Crap. Kefka Tower, like the final fight with Kefka, I added that one as well because Kefka's theme there is super cool. I love that. And yeah, so that's all I really have to say about the music, art style, gameplay, story. Like I said, the story is great. Now, I guess I'll kind of rank, because I think that's all I have to say about the general, like, big three, like, gameplay, art, and music. Character. I already spoke about the characters, like I said. Cyan's probably my favorite. Cyan and Sabin are probably tied for number one. I like Cyan most because of the story. I like Sabin most for his character. And I don't know if I'd put 3. Maybe Gao, honestly. Now, I guess, kind of speaking on some disappointments, was like not the quality of the characters, but like the abilities of the characters. I was disappointed that Setzer wasn't super useful to me. Also, like ones with cool designs, like Gogo. Gogo has a really cool design, but I didn't really get to use him because he's so late game. You don't find him until you get into the Zona Eater's belly, which can be pretty late game. And also, I like Strago, but Strago, like I said, I didn't like using his abilities. And Shadow, I wish I would have been able to use Shadow more, but my predominant party was Terra, Cyan, Sabin, and Edgar, because those honestly were the ones I found most enjoyable to use while playing. Now, you can make a party out of literally anyone. And then, like, Mog is kind of goofy, but I wish the dances were a little bit more reliable when it comes to, like, accuracy and not falling every time. But, yeah. So, then what is it? I guess, yeah, I'll kind of get to ranking, because I think that's where we're at, since I've kind of discussed everything there is. So, ranking. Like I said, number 1's Final Fantasy VI. Number 2. Final Fantasy VI, in my opinion, had better characters than 4. However, I liked the world of 4 a little bit more, because it was more fantasy, while Final Fantasy VI, they had more like steampunk, semi-modern era, kind of like Final Fantasy VII, except it has a little bit more of a fantasy focus than Final Fantasy VII. So, I do like its world more than Final Fantasy VII's, but I don't like it as much as 4. Now, that kind of makes me want to tie them at second. But I do really like the characters of 6. It's been a moment since I've played 4. I bet if I replayed 4, I'd have a better view of it, but I've already platinum 4, so I'm probably not going to go through it again. So, I guess I'd probably put 4... I'll put 4 at 3rd, 6 at 2. Then... like I said, I'm gonna rank Crisis Core and 7 together. I do like Crisis Core. I honestly like Crisis Core more than I do the base Final Fantasy 7 RPG. But I know that's a very contentious point. I know having Final Fantasy 7 in my last place, well, not Final Fantasy 7 in my last place. Final Fantasy 7 would be fourth here, and then first would be Final Fantasy 1. Now, if I'd played through all of Final Fantasy 8, I believe it'd probably be fourth because I did like its world and characters. Not the characters necessarily, but I liked its world more than Final Fantasy 7's. I'm just not a big fan of Final Fantasy 7. I went into it with too high of expectations and I got disappointed. But I do like the characters. I do really like the characters of Final Fantasy 7. But yeah, so I think that'd probably be the ranking. Final Fantasy 6 was a great game. I really enjoyed it. It did suck that it grinded my gears a little bit that I had to replay through it, but also it didn't feel like a slog. Like, I got through it. It took me like 20 hours, but it didn't really feel like 20 hours. It felt like a fun little enjoyable jaunt right back through the game. So yeah, the next game I'm actually playing, I just started it today, is Final Fantasy 2, so y'all will get a review on that sometime in the near future. It's a lot shorter than Final Fantasy 6, so yeah, I'll be getting that out to y'all pretty soon. But that's all I really have to say about Final Fantasy 6, and that's all I really have for episode 248 of Shelf Reviews. So thank you very much for watching.